why don't business people help the church run better? Because it is a business. You have to pay taxes, you have to pay the light bill, you have to pay the mortgage, you got to build an addition, and so if you're a business guy, the conversation just frankly will be awkward, and they'll wonder what your ulterior motives are. But give it time, and if they know that you're genuinely trying to help, I'd encourage all the business guys listening to go talk to their pastor.
What's going on? This is Brett Snodgrass with another episode of the Iron Deep podcast. Got Scott Perry and Camilo Colonia on the show with me today. What's going on, guys?
Hey,
Doing
guys.
good, man. Doing good.
Doing awesome. Excited.
Yeah, super excited to have you guys on the show. I know we've gotten to know each other quite well over the past year. If you guys, if I haven't mentioned before, we're doing Iron Core, which is a part of Iron Deep. Obviously, the main business is Iron Deep, an organization, but Iron Core is really, we're doing life together with about 12 guys, and Scott Perry and Camilo are on that, on the Iron Core. So we've been doing life together this year, guys. Super just getting to know you guys, getting to know your families, your wives. We did the couples retreat.
Oh yeah,
sweet.
A few months ago,
good time.
and that was awesome. You guys have some amazing wives, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All got along
some good
too,
decisions.
which was cool.
Yeah, they all got along. Nice.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm super excited to have you guys on this show. So you guys listened to this show before. We're talking about faith, business, men. And so Scott and Camilo are both businessmen. They're entrepreneurs. A lot of them have done, or Camilo, you're real estate broker and you own your own brokerage. You also doing some investing. And Scott has also a real estate entrepreneur, but he also is a pilot. So he does some of that, and he does a lot of interesting things as well. Crypto, I know we've had you on the show before. Yep. You're really into Web3 and a lot of really cool stuff Scott does. But today we're actually going to be digging into ministry. And what I love, I think, more than anything is really just seeing guys like yourself that maybe haven't gone, nothing against, but haven't gone to, to be a pastor, a minister, but you're really just taking your faith and you're turning in your passions, you're turning it into something amazing that God's calling you to do. And we're going to talk about Hangar 100 today, which is a ministry that they've started. And we're going to talk about that. It really mixes faith, and aviation, church real estate, and we're going to be digging into that. But Scott, why don't I start with you, man? Tell us a bit about your background. You're a pilot, entrepreneur, real estate, and who is Scott Perry?
Yeah, so I started flying back in 2006. I went to Liberty University and went to the military for 10 years, flew Black Hawk helicopters and then Dash 7, which is a fixed wing. And then transitioned, went Republic Airways, which is local here in Indy. And then I'm now at American Airlines based out of Philly, flying the 787 to Europe. So I just did Lisbon last week, so that was a lot of fun. But through that, I grew up around real estate. And so I've always done that kind of on the side as far as the wealth building and stuff like that. And so, and then, became a Christian, gave my life, raised in a Christian home, but my personal journey, I would say, started about 7 years old. And so just always been trying to do the evangelism thing through the workplace and kind of take that approach. And so doing that through the military, got to pray for a lot of folks and encourage a lot of folks, and, especially in hard situations and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. And so same thing at American, try to be the light wherever you go, kind of thing. And the entrepreneur side, obviously, as you know, had a FedEx route for a couple of years, ended up growing that to 48 employees and then selling it. And then had the Indie Solution, which is where Brett and I really started talking more regularly. The house I live in actually is a simple property.
That's right.
that
Nice.
I flipped.
That
What
one.
a property.
Yeah, it's pretty. No, actually, that was back in the Darren days, and he said, "You want to go see it?" I said, "Sure." We entered the neighborhood. I didn't even know what house it was. We got in the neighborhood, and I said, "I'll take it." So it was an easy sell. He's like, "You want to see it first?" I'm like, "Sure, but we'll buy it." So,
So now you're living in one of our flips for 6-7 years now, right?
yeah, we bought it from you in 2017. So
Yeah,
that would have been
that's awesome.
August. So.
Yeah,
And that was probably the first time I got to talk to you back and forth more regularly. but yeah, so then we had the Indie Solution, did some wholesaling, some flipping. Still flip homes with my dad. Just bought another one a couple weeks ago, actually. That's kind of obviously the crypto thing, which shameless plug on a podcast from a couple years ago. So yeah, just kind of down. I like to call myself an opportunist, maybe.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yes, definitely.
So
And he wear toes, and Scotty P, he wears toe socks.
I do wear toe
So if you guys
socks. Yes,
It is the funniest, most inappropriate. We don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah. It's a freak show.
Throws everybody off.
Yeah. So that's kind of,
Nah,
and
just
then through real estate, and I came from a church planning background on my mom's side, and so that's kind of where this Hangar 100 thing kind of came about. And then when I was a kid, I always wanted to have a worship center. That was kind of one of my dreams. So last year, God was kind of like, "Hey, maybe start that 501c3 and see what happens." And so
Yeah. Well, you got your hand in a lot of things. You're an opportunist. You like to dabble in a lot of different things. I think you're a connector, you're a networker. Scott, we had an event a few weeks ago, guys, at Iron Deep, kind of our annual event where we bring in a lot of new people. Scotty invited several people and they all said yes, and they came. So you're a connector, networker. And so thanks for being on the show, man. And it's awesome to get to know you. Excited what we can do to support Hangar 100 and all that we're going to hear about today. So, Camilo, why don't you just kind of share a little bit, man? You real estate broker now, but you have quite the story, quite the journey as well. Came from a different country, so
Yes.
tell us about your story, man.
Yeah. So, Colombian born. Been in the United States. Well, in Indy for about 23 years now. I came in 2001 with the ambition to be a pilot, of all things. So aviation's deep in my heart, even though I'm in sales and I do all sorts of different things. Unfortunately, for a Colombian guy to pick 2001 as let's venture into aviation was a horrendous idea. So, young kid, just very disappointed, had to bury my dream. And that, sucks for everybody when we have to do that. The only thing you wanted to do. So I, had to bury that for 20 years, basically. But over those course of 20 years, I've worked in retail and sales. I've dealt with a lot of cars. My dad used to have a shop in Colombia. So I love cars and things like this. So anything with machines, I'm very into. But sales, I work for Salesforce companies, labor and all this kind of things. And then eventually got interested into real estate. And I worked as an assistant for a Hispanic. He was probably the most successful Hispanic realtor in the residential side here in Indianapolis. And I was his assistant and went all the way up. When I finally started doing my own deals, I also picked a great time of recession. So, back when you're doing retail deals and you're lucky to clear $700 after a deal. So it was rough. But in hindsight, I learned a ton because you had to have so many revolutions, right? So I was able to be in front of so many, I had a lot of buyers. That was the good thing about the Hispanic marketplace back then, and a lot of cash deals. So, and it was a buyer's market, a lot of inventory. So had the opportunity to not only interact with a lot of folks. Obviously, I'm bilingual, so I'm able to be a good connector there. But on the side of just seeing so many assets, and that helped a lot as far as learning about them. So when I bought my first property for myself, it was also a kind of a house hacking deal. It was, if you guys remember the $100 down HUD deals. This is back in the day, and come into a house that needed tons of work, and it ended up being a great. It was tough at the time, but years after it did really well. The house we're in today, this house was a short sale. So I've always found myself to be in those positions of wanting to find a property either from a wholesaler or someone that's into the field, or, we get the good deal. So looking for the deal on the real estate side. But yeah, then my mentor, which real estate company, we dealt with a lot of the Hispanic marketplace when the economy went south. A lot of the loan programs kind of went with that. And then, it just got really tough. Also ventured into restaurant management ownership. I don't even know what it was because it was with my boss at the time. So it gave me a disastrous economy, really hard to do a restaurant. It was an Argentinian restaurant downtown Indianapolis. This is back in a time of when the big restaurants were dominating. So having the niche, cool, trendy thing was not the thing. Today, that place would
very much the thing.
It would rocket here. Just the wrong timing for things.
Moclan,
of course. but in hindsight's 2020, because due to all these shortcomings and ups and downs. Today, I deal on I own my own brokerage, and I've transitioned from the residential. I still do residential, but I don't. I focus 90+% on my commercial part of the business. And in that side of the business, my primary focus is restaurants. And I think, I'm a broker that has that angle where I've been in the back of the house. I know what you need. I know what permits to get. I know who to talk to. So that gives me an angle that we're a competitive advantage versus other brokers. So obviously I'm bilingual too. So I represent several of the bigger Mexican restaurants here in the city. And it's been a great journey. We're small by design. We're just a few folks doing some good stuff for some people, and we really enjoy it. Obviously, the investing side, and that's why we get along so well with you guys too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I know your story is incredible, and I just find it so unique that you came to the United States to be a pilot, to do aviation, and now here we are. And I know that's how you and kind of Scotty met. So, Scotty, you want to tell that story real quick, because you met Camilo through kind of aviation. So, talk about that.
So we were. So I was playing on the worship team at our local church here, and they have a coffee shop. So between services, I went out to the coffee shop, and Camilo walked in with his flight bag.
Yeah,
and
it says Cessna on the side.
Yeah, it says Cessna on the side, and so it's funny. I'm looking up your shirt right now. So it's funny. So I go over there and I'm like, oh, hey, another pilot. That's not super normal in the church setting. There'll be a couple, but to bring a flight bag into church, it's not normal typically. So I was like, hey, are you a pilot? And it ended up being Camilo's first. He just got done with his first solo, which is for a pilot is a huge milestone.
Well, and let me also add that another thing that was huge is, if you know this part of the story, of course, it's been 20 years. So I had my midlife crisis. Okay. I have to fly. My wife was very supportive about it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So that day not only was important for any pilot, to me, it was huge because I had to put my dream to bed. So it was a good thing. It was awesome.
Yeah. So it's funny. So the tradition when you solo a plane for the first time is it's a shirt cutting ceremony. So they actually cut the back of your shirt, and then they draw like the instructor draws like the runway on it and stuff. And then they call it your shirt cutting ceremony. Well, anyway, so Camilo has that shirt up there on the
I might take
wall,
it down just
which
to show it.
Yeah, you could if you wanted. But the funny thing is, it's like, so that's actually Camilo and I's friendiversary, if you will.
Right.
So we've got, so every time I come in his office, I always see the shirt. I'm like, oh, that's the day Camilo and I met.
That was the day.
That's cool.
I think that's also important to say that Scott was extremely encouraging, because I've told him the story, and he was just, to me, it meant the world. And this is before I told him that entire story. So he's very encouraging, very cool. I just met this guy. And to be quite honest, back then I was very lukewarm as far as my faith was concerned. I come from a Catholic background, became an adult and kind of cooled off. So, keep the wife happy. This is cool. Go to this, and this is back in the times with COVID and all this stuff. It's hard to find coffee shops that you'd be open and whatever. So that's what I was there. So anyway, but because of this relationship, I was like, oh, I guess these Christian guys aren't that bad. It's kind of a weird, I don't know why I had this weird thing. So I started, and we had tons of things in common: cars, airplanes, real estate, etc.
And one of the things was finding out that he was from Colombia.
Oh, yeah.
I lived in Colombia for 7 months with the military.
So he didn't tell me what he did. He still doesn't tell me, which is crazy.
I've totally told you. No, I haven't. I have not. I have. Hey, turn the phones off. No,
I know. I always find it kind of cool, because I always wanted things like some spy thing going on, man. Some cool airplane things, spy stuff.
VIP movement.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So you guys met, you guys hit it off, obviously, both really into, Camilo, you started flying a little bit, and then Scott, obviously that's your background. And then now let's talk about Hangar 100. So this is, it was born, Scott, you mentioned you loved evangelism and always looking for ways to share your faith with people, to pray over people. And you look for ways to seek that out, whether it's the military or real estate or and then Hangar 100. So I want to talk about this. So you guys kind of linked up. You started this ministry, Hanger 100. I want to hear, Scotty. Let's just start with you. Tell us about Hanger 100. What is it, and what do you guys do to mix your passion with your faith?
Yeah, so it kind of started when Camilo and I met. You know, I had a little two-seater airplane, and so we started flying together. We did some trips together, flew a little two-seater airplane around the country, quite literally.
Imagine a
Twice.
Mazda Miata with wings.
Yeah, that's literally.
Yeah.
So,
So people think it's terrifying, but we're
yeah.
like,
Right.
oh yeah, it was a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot saw a lot of cool things. Saw areas of the country. I mean, you hadn't been out west really.
no, I
much,
never
so that was
further
fun.
than Denver. That was it. Until
Yeah.
then,
So we were kind of doing that, and then I've as far as like the church planning background, um, over COVID, a lot of churches closed, right? And so a lot of maybe churches that were kind of already on the brink of having some financial issues, that was just kind of the final thing, and they were just like, okay, it's over. One of the things I found out was that these, which is obvious, but you know, one of the things that kind of was highlighted is that a lot of these churches they don't pay tax or anything like that. So if they own them free and clear, they can just sit there vacant for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one denomination just in the Indy area, or I should say the Indiana area.
Yeah.
There's 300 churches, and I think they said 80% of them are actually vacant. That
Wow.
was just one denomination.
Wow.
And so
Oh, wow.
I also have a heart for needing more Christian schools. And so partnered with a school to try to find them a building, ended up finding them a 35,000 square foot church that they could partner with. And that kind of, but the church was very small, and they're essentially older generation. They might be passing the building on at some point. And so we started talking to these folks about maybe donating it to the school, so they could just use it as a Christian school, or to us, because we thought about maybe starting a church at one point as well, and then partnering with the school. And just kind of through those talks, what became apparent was it's very difficult to do outside of a 501c3. And so everybody was actually all on the same page. The problem was if you transfer it from a 501c3 to an LLC, you can pay what is it, phantom tax, I think is the word, or one of the accelerated taxes. So you have this building that needs a lot of work, but it may be in a prime location, so it may be worth $3 million. Well, if you transfer that over, now it's as if somebody gifted you that, right? So now you got to pay a bunch of taxes. And a lot of times these churches, if you're trying to continue them as a church, the building may be worth $3 million, but the church can't afford the $3 million, right?
CapExes and all that.
Right. So they might be able to afford to run a $500,000 building, but they need the space of a $3 million building. So to keep the cost low is like, okay, we really need a 501c3 for this. And that's kind of where God really started pushing me into like, hey, let's get this 501c3 started, and then you can do all these things. And so we kind of have two pieces right now, and that's the evangelism side, and then we also have the church real estate side is what we're calling it. So with the background, obviously through Iron Deep, we have a lot of resources in Iron Core, and then Camilo with commercial real estate, and then the other board member, it's me, Camilo, and Tyler Hazel, who's the treasurer on the board. And so obviously we're all real estate guys. We've done commercial real estate. So it's like, how can we give our business help to churches that really traditionally churches don't run well as a business because they're there to serve people. So they want to focus on the mission. They don't want to focus on the back office stuff. That's another issue that a lot of these church plants have. So can
you talk to me about the church real estate a little bit more? Obviously that there's a lot of churches, right? There's a lot of churches. I think I live in Fort Wayne, and they were saying that there's 400 churches in Fort Wayne.
Right.
And you go to small towns, there's churches everywhere. Indianapolis, I don't even know how many. You guys mentioned one denomination having 350 churches, something like that. So a lot of churches, not a lot of money probably budgeted to run these. You guys say not running these well, not running them as an organization or as a business. And so again, the mission, the heart's really, really good, but the business lacks. So they can't afford these buildings. So you guys can come in and help with these church buildings. Can you take me into that? So like, let's say, this church building is not running well. They want to gift you this particular church. What do you guys do with it? What's kind of the exit from there? Is it bringing it back to the church? Is it
Yeah.
a school? Is it something else?
Yeah,
Talk
so
to us about that.
it's it's just like in wholesaling or anything. You're trying to find out what the need is of the individual, and right. So some people, the church is actually just closed, and they just want to pass it on to another generation. So we have churches that we know of that are currently renting retail space, and they're looking for a church, right? So as you
Mhm.
mentioned, being a connector earlier, which is kind of, I guess you could say, a gift of mine or something. So just making all those links put together, right? So um, the idea would be the best idea would be to. We just lost power.
We lost power.
Oh, interesting.
That's never happened here.
So we just had a technical difficulty. Scotty and Camilo's power just went out, which means just you guys are saying some amazing stuff, and the enemy doesn't want the words to be said. So thanks for welcome back, guys. Glad your power's back on.
I was back.
Hey,
About 5 minutes, not too bad.
not too
That's
bad.
right. That's right. Scotty, we were just talking about church real estate. Obviously, this is something that's been on your mind, on your heart. Looking around, so many church buildings and churches again aren't operating them very, very well. They have a passion and a heart for people, but a lot of times that doesn't translate into running an organization, running a back office, a business, having to make income, right? To run, to keep the lights on in the building and all that. So my question to you was, so I'm a church, I'm not running my building well. Now I have this building, I can't afford to keep it, but
Right.
I'm not paying any taxes on it. It's paid off. You can come in. I want to maybe give it to you because I still want to make an impact. What could you do with this particular building, and what are some options?
Yeah, so there's really three options. More specifically, two, kind of a quasi third option. But as I was saying, we have churches that we know of that we're partnered with that need buildings, and they're maybe even a home church, or maybe they're in a retail strip center, and they're still looking for their final home location. So if, say, the church that's currently in the building, they're now maybe they're permanently going to close their doors and they don't want to be a church anymore. We've talked to those folks. And so if they donated to us, we would then be the custodians of that building. We would then bring it up to par, because a lot of these have a lot of deferred maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
We just looked at one the other day that had about 200,000 in deferred maintenance. One that we looked at had about 800,000 in just deferred maintenance. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, are you just like getting these churches for free?" It's like, well, kind of. Yeah, officially
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
but practically no. So we do invest money to then bring them up to standard, and then we would bring in one of these churches that is looking for a permanent home, and then we would rent it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And in that partnership, what we offer is a lot of businesses have services offered as it's called a fractional CFO,
Mm-hmm.
and you can hire those as an entrepreneur if that's not your thing. I hired one myself. So essentially, we're going to be the business side, if you will, the executive pastor. So I feel like the best way it works practically is to have a preaching pastor and an executive pastor. So the executive pastor is essentially just the executive of the church. He runs the business side. Those are his gifts. Those are my gifts. So that's the service that I bring. And then the pastor of the startup church, instead of worrying about, okay, what's the AC broke and all these things, right? Now I take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now he just focus on building the congregation and truly being a shepherd, because a lot of pastors, they run into the thing where they don't have time to shepherd the people because they're so busy running the business.
Right.
So I think the tag team approach works. So that's one of those. And then you could say, okay, well, that new partnership church rents the building from us. What we do is we then put that money in a fund, and then that fund is used to raise money for the next building. So
Mhm.
if the same scenario happens again, those are the funds that then we use to bring it up to then bless another church.
Mm.
And so, and then another scenario is we could lease it back. We talked to a church a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
about that, where they have $185,000 in debt. They also have about 50,000 of repairs that need to be done. But they can't. So we're just using rough numbers. So say it's 250,000 that we would have to bring to the table, and they're actually in foreclosure right now, which happens a lot to churches as well, because maybe they got a loan to do something and they didn't use the funds properly. And I don't want to say properly as in they did anything nefarious with it. But what they did was maybe they did a project, they overpaid to fix something that didn't really need to be fixed.
Right.
Because they just don't know.
Yeah.
So it's not that their heart was in the wrong place. It's just they essentially don't know. And so 250,000, but this church is an inner city church, so they can only afford about $1,000 a month. And any real estate guy would say 250,000 invested for $1,000 a month, you're upside down, you're going negative.
Yeah.
That's just the
It's
quick
not a
math.
great deal.
Right. And then you have no money for any repairs in the future. So that's where, if somebody else donates a building, right, we'll use those funds, and we could even sell them. So maybe it's in a place that we don't have a partner church. We don't have, and this is kind of the quasi third option. There's a partner church. The current church doesn't want to sell it. The current church doesn't want to stay a church. So essentially they would sell the building and the money would go back to corporate, or it just stay in this nonprofit and they donate it to another nonprofit. So that's the thing, where they could donate the building. We would get it ready. We'd maybe sell it, and then we'd use those funds to offset the cost for that inner city church that's actually doing a lot of great things for the community. They just don't have the money because they're in a very poor area of town.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the mission statement on the real estate side for me is that I came up with a while ago was reallocating kingdom funds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the idea. So those are kind of some of the options.
Yeah, interesting. One last question with that, like, how do you find all these churches? I mean, do you guys market for this, or
relationships,
Yeah.
which he happens to be quite good at?
Yeah.
I do not market at all, actually. Like I said, mom's side church planting background. So people talk about generational curses, from the Bible, and then we kind of leave out the talk on generational blessings. So I have a lot of generational blessings from my mom's side, and all the great work that the family's done. Built some of the biggest churches in town, for better or for worse. But through that, I know a lot of people. And so people just call me because there's really no one doing creative finance, creative real estate for churches with business background.
It's true.
There's some out there, but they do it for their own church, right? They don't branch out to help other churches. So literally people just call me. So it's basically off referrals. The one we saw last week was literally somebody called me. They're like, so you're the guy that like helps churches that are like going to get foreclosed on stay a church? And I'm like, I mean, I try. Yes.
No, that's awesome.
So I don't market at all. It just, the more you do it, the more people need. It's a need out there, and so people find you, kind of thing.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting that because you're right. People don't do a lot of creative financing or creative things with churches, and I've always said that churches need business people to come in to help them run the operation, and so that's just a very niche thing, and I always think it's odd. I don't know about you guys, but do you think it's odd? Because I used to live in Cicero, Indiana, and there was a church there, and it's like right in the middle of town, and it looks like a church, like an old Methodist church, and it has that feel, and just it looks like a church, but it wasn't a church, and someone bought it and they turned it into a CPA firm or something, So like it was just really looking like a church, but it had like just a sign. It just said, I think it was actually for pilots. It was called flight tax. It was
actually,
you know,
yeah, you actually know him too, actually,
something like that. Yeah. Anyways, I always thought that was odd to see a church, but it was something different. Like, and I always wonder, like, what do people do with these churches that aren't that if it's not a church? So I always thought that was interesting.
I would say one of the frustrating sides that I've run into is, sometimes, people say, well, you're trying to get this church for free or whatever, and you're being greedy. And I'm like, well, it's not. It's actually not. I look at it from the other side and say, we had a church that, just for rough, I'll just make up numbers, but say it was 500,000, right? And they know on the open market, actually, this is a real number. It was 350,000, and I was trying to buy it with my own funds, and then rent it out for 4,000 a month to this church that actually needed it. So again, if you're real estate, that's really not making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's covering the overhead.
Right.
Now it's going to be my personal funds. Well, they found out that it was in a nice spot, so they sold it to a developer for 1.1 million.
Hmm.
And it's like, the goal is to carry on the mission of
Mhm.
whatever the original people had for that place, right?
Mhm.
So now they bulldoze it, now they turn it into homes, and yeah, it was worth 1.1 million. But that's where I have to tell people that they're like, hey, we want the 1.1 million and you can have it. It's like, right, but the church can only afford 4,000 a month.
Mhm.
And so this is a nonprofit thing. It's not, and you can go into the philanthropy talk all you want, but realistically, it's just not that profitable.
Right. Yeah.
So, and any
Yeah.
profit that's made is to offset something else that's very not profitable. And
Yeah.
so, the hardest thing, if you're on a church board out there, just getting the board to, what vision and legacy do you want to leave
Hmm.
with that
Right.
property?
Yeah.
And I think, is the legacy, do you want it bulldozed and turned into single family homes? If
Mhm.
that's the legacy you want, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Or do you want it to be a school that develops generations to come? And so
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's just sharing
Do
the
you think
vision. And so,
churches? Do you think like is there like do you think there's a lack of vision?
oh,
And I don't know much about from the
absolutely.
church world, but
My face will be that'll be my answer. So,
Yo, Scotty P it.
yeah, Camilo could probably speak on that
Oh
one.
yeah.
But
yeah.
or
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's all I'll say on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty rough. And
Yeah.
I will say, if you are a business owner and you're in a thriving church, be willing to reach out and help. A lot of times it's a little back and forth because pastors are like, why is this business guy helping me?
Mhm.
Like they don't know. It's a very unused formula in
Mhm.
America. There's
Mhm.
just no. And I travel over it with the pilot. I go to churches when I'm on the road, and like I've been on staff at churches before, and then it's like just all kinds of church stuff. And so it's just, but it seems to be there's always this weird, like you said, like why don't business people help the church run better? Because it is a business. You have to pay
Mhm.
taxes, you have to pay the light bill, you have to pay the mortgage, you got to build
Keep
an
on stuff.
addition,
Yeah.
And so if you're a business guy, the conversation just frankly will be awkward, and they'll wonder what your ulterior motives are. But give it time, and if
Yeah.
they know that you're
Interesting.
genuinely trying to help, I'd encourage all the business guys listening to go talk to their pastor, their associate pastor or something. See what
Yeah.
they need.
Yeah. No, that's
That's
awesome.
good.
That's awesome. Oh, Camilo, let's transition too. So you guys are doing that. That's one part of Hangar 100, the church building, and then there's also obviously getting back to the aviation and your guys' passion there, evangelism through that. I know I came to an event a month or two ago that you guys did. Talk to us about kind of like your passion in this ministry, and I know it even branches way beyond just doing some events and evangelism, but you guys are talking about caring for the least of these in certain areas as well. So, talk
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. So a couple of things came from that. So obviously I'm the whole story with aviation and connecting with Scott, and he had at the time a Cessna 150 that actually he was very graceful, let me use it for training and things like this. And in the interim of this, I went to a little airfield up the road in Nobles, it's a grass field, and they had a pancake event, and it was really cool. But airplane shows tend to be like car shows where not every vehicle they'll let you hop in. As a matter of fact, the majority they're unavailable for you to hop in. And I have a daughter at the time, she was 2 or 3 years old, and there was only 2 airplanes that you could hop on, and they were owned by the Civil Air Patrol. It was really cool, but the line was ridiculous. And I'm like, man, that's a cool outreach program. We also been advised really well by the Holy Rollers Church, which they're really good friends of ours and from Scott's family. And they have a really cool truck that looks like Mater, like an old 1950s truck with a cool engine. And they were at this latest air show. And the idea with this vehicle is that not only is there to show it, but you could hop in and it leads to conversation, and I can talk from my background of being away from faith for such a long time that depends on how you would approach it. It would be like, ugh, I would have been like, not too much. Well, the idea, one of the things we want to do with Hangar 100 is what we did at that air show, which was an outreach, right? So I was that little kid. Scott was that little kid. And even some of your children, for the guys watching this, you don't know. They're going to go in front of an airplane. You're going to see it in their eyes. They just immediately go up in the flame. And the idea is to say, hey, come on, hop in. let me show you around. This is what this does. And it's just really cool just to do it for kids, and they're playing with an agenda. But ultimately, that can lead to some meaningful conversations and even prayer, which is key. Actually, in that event, I also learned that it's not just kids. You know, I had a couple of situations where, you know, one example comes by of a guy that the kid wasn't interested in hopping into the airplane, and he just, you know, because flat faced guy, didn't know emotion. I said, hey, but I could see he was curious, and I was like, do you want to hop in? And well, somehow the dad, and I convinced him, and the guy was like, his eyes lit up and his big smile. Yeah. So anyway, it's an outreach. So that's one section of it, just doing that outreach with the airplanes, using those. And if you see this logo here, this is a biplane that Scott flies. It's a Starduster, and it's really beautiful, really cool. So that's the eye candy. People see it and they're like, wow, this thing's cool. It's very delicate. It's sturdy in the air, very delicate on the ground. So we can't hop the kids on them. There's a 150 now, potentially another airplane that we could use to, which imagine an F-150 where you can just, it's not going to fall into pieces. Well, we learned that there's some exceptions to that rule. You learn every day.
The kids will test it.
Some kids might think that it's like a pull-up bar when you're pulling on the controls, and on the other end, we're like, oh, because we got to fly this thing out of here. But anyway, we've solved that, so don't worry about it. So that's one part of it. Another thing that's stirring my heart too is being able to do missions with the airplane. So a perfect example is North Carolina, what happened recently. And, this scenarios happen where the roads are closed for whatever situation. And there's regional airports everywhere. Indianapolis alone, we have just, a bunch of little airports. And with a small Cessna, you can approach anywhere, and they'll clear the runways typically quite quickly. So we want to be able to provide some resources and for those like super critical situations like this. So we want to do that. Also bring people if necessary, prayer, whatever we can do. And another portion of it is to be able to, we've been in conversations with a few organizations to be able to do some victim relief of traffic victims. So there are situations in which someone's from human trafficking or for whatever situation, they need to be moved or moved from another city to another, and within a 300-mile radius, little airplanes are ideal. And there is, there's one of the organizations we're talking to, they only had one pilot in this region out of Michigan. Yeah. Very complicated to be able to coordinate to do things. So we want to that's something we're working towards. It obviously requires a bigger airplane and there's more intricacy to it. But Hangar 100 has that portion of it. And another thing that's really important for us is encourage youth. That's something that us as kids, even though I didn't do it as a career, it would have meant the world, independently of your background and all this stuff. And Hangar 100 Ready actually donated their first private pilot certificate to the son of a missionary. And it's awesome. You see the photos, you see the videos, and it just touches your heart, man, because we were there and it's just cool to see it. We want to be able to do that for private pilots and also AMPs, which are airplane mechanics. That is a field that doesn't require a college degree, and it is a high-paying job with a lot of need. So we want to provide aviation not only as it could be an expensive hobby, right? So we don't want that. That's not what I wanted. For my midlife crisis situation, I was like, how can you use airplanes for something that means more?
Yeah, no, I love that.
Camilo actually brought this up before we even talked about starting the 501c3. So it really happened organically because he had mentioned about taking up older gentlemen that maybe lost their medicals.
Oh, that was
at these fly-ins, and just just giving back to the community and just be in the hands and feet.
Yeah. So that story was, you'll have the young people and the older folks that, once you lose your medical, you can't fly anymore, pilot in command, but you'll see that they won't stop looking in the sky. And what actually happened is at that fly-in where I saw the children, my family happened to be, I went on a couple of occasions, and then another occasion, my family was away. So I went by myself with my cameras, I like photos. And I was like, well, I'm going to make the best out of it. So it was a pancake thing. And I'm going to talk to someone. And it was an older gentleman. He had a shirt with a World War II or C-47s. Like it looks like a DC-3. I have a little model of there. But anyway, it's an old DC-3. And I was like, can I sit with you? And the gentleman was kind of grumpy, but I was like, sure, whatever. And started sharing stories. It was a World War II pilot in his 90s. phenomenal stories, obviously alone. And that was just like stirring my heart. And I was like, these are folks that would never like, they don't stop looking to the sky.
Mhm.
So how cool it would be to say, hey, don't give me anything, just sign a waiver, whatever we have to do, but be able to provide aviation back to those folks. So
No, that's awesome.
Take first spin.
take them for a spin.
No, that's so cool. That's so cool. And I know that my kids loved when we went to the air show. They loved sitting in the airplane, and that was just an amazing experience. Something very unique that you guys are using. Again, I just wrote down. You guys are using your talents. You guys are very talented individuals, not just being pilots, which is a very unique skill, but also in business, which is also a unique skill. Just using your talents and resources in so many different ways. And Scotty, you said, really just furthering the kingdom, which I think that's what you're doing with these churches. That's what you're doing with with your evangelism with the airplanes, and reallocating kingdom funds. We talked about that a little bit. And Camilo, you said something at the end, which I thought was really, really important, is a lot of times when we think of airplanes, for example, and the businessman, we think of someone that's really wealthy buying an airplane to have as maybe the eye candy, right? As the sign of success. Or your family, Scotty, used a car, right? And sometimes we think of a really nice car or a sports car, a really nice is the eye candy for the glory of the individual, for example. And Camilo, you said just using this for something more, using this ministry, using your passions and gifts and even your wealth and your resources to really impact the kingdom. And I just think that's amazing. And that's what Hangar 100 is all about. So awesome. Do you guys want to say anything else as we wrap up the show today?
Website will be out.
Oh, yes.
Excited about that.
Some merch
probably
coming
when this
soon.
Yeah, merch. Hats. But that'll should be out when the podcast comes out.
Yes.
So it's Hangar 100 Ministries.
Yes.
Awesome.
Check it out and follow us on Facebook too. We have something out there, but website should have all the links for that.
Awesome. Well, you guys are an encouragement and inspiration. We'll definitely check that out and put that in our show notes on our YouTube channel with the Iron Deep channel. And again, you guys are listening in. We all are part of the kingdom. We all can use our talents, our resources, and it could be just having that conversation with your pastor at your local church. It could be starting your own ministry. It could be joining a different ministry that's already existing. So whatever that looks like, we just want to encourage you guys. Just take a step out, and we're on this together. So thank you so much, Scotty and Camilo. Wish you guys well, man.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
See ya.